What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 45. And given that this episode will publish the day after Christmas, I hope you guys all had a very Merry Christmas. And if you celebrate Hanukkah, which I think starts actually either yesterday or the day I'm actually recording this, happy Hanukkah and hope you enjoy those festivities. I personally celebrate Christmas, so I'm going to be enjoying that with my family. And it's such a great time of year, So hopefully you guys enjoy that. Maybe you got some cool gifts. Maybe you got some new video games. And maybe just spend some time with the family. That's always nice. Had a good meal, maybe. And just enjoyed the holiday because it's really one of the best times of the year, I have to say. Now, again, I also have to say thank you all for your support lately. We are right on the cusp, at least at the time of this recording, of hitting 400 downloads, that milestone, and it's awesome. So I'm super stoked on that. I know it's a small number, but for me, it's cool to see that, and I feel like for each episode we're gaining some traction. And to those of you that are new to the show, I welcome you, and I thank you for you tuning in. Hopefully, you guys enjoy the format, enjoy the conversation, enjoy the topics. That's really what it's all about. And I love talking about video games. So I hopefully that shows through the microphone and I guess camera through these the new video episodes that we've kind of gotten ourselves into. So given that it's the holidays, as I mentioned last episode, I'm kind of pre-recording the last episodes of the year going into 2023, just to kind of try to pre-record, get the work done, so I can kind of enjoy the time and the holidays with the family and stuff like that, and not have to worry about it. And really, what we're doing is what I like to call my end of the year series, where we're diving into some of our basically some of the best of the best of 2022. Last episode, if you've tuned into that, we talked about the best games I should have played. So I put together a list of the games I didn't get around to that I think are deserving of my time and attention that I would like to try out. And then this time we're going to talk about some of the best games I've played this year. And then next week, for the next episode, we're going to be talking about 2023 and taking a look ahead. And so the crazy thing is that this is actually, when this publishes, the last episode of the year. So it's crazy because I think the episode that publishes after that will be New Year's Day. So what a wild and crazy year. Not only in video games, but for, myself personally and in kind of going on this venture of podcasting. And it's pretty cool. Gotta say, I've dug it, and I'm happy to have you along for the ride, because really, without you guys, I'm just, a nerd talking into a microphone. So thank you guys for that. So for those of you who are new to the show, remember the best way you can support the show is to leave us a nice rating on the platform that you're listening on. You can check us over up on YouTube and Rumble, watch video episodes of the podcast, and also some clips if you're into that stuff. So check it out over on YouTube. You can just search Gamecite. You should find me there. And be sure to subscribe. Trying to grow the subscriber base over there. It'd be nice to see that on the upwards trend. You can find me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And remember, catch new episodes of the show each and every week, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And as I mentioned, the last two episodes of the year, to wrap up this end of the series, that will actually go up 2 days early on Locals. So head over to locals.com and search for Gamecite. You should see me there. It's free to join, and I'm not asking for any paid subscriptions over there. I would just like to, I think it's a really cool platform, and I'd like to start to build a community over there. So check it out. You can tune into the podcast 2 days early over on Locals. That's good. It's good. For those audio listeners, I just took a sip of my Mountain Dew, and it's fantastic. I don't really buy Mountain Dew, but it was on sale when I was at the grocery store, and I was like, you know what? It's the holidays. going to do it. And it's good. I enjoy it. You know what's funny, actually? I saw this video of someone that mixed like a light beer. So think, I don't know, Coors Light, Bud Light. I think they did a Busch Light in the video, um, and Mountain Dew, and it tastes really good. And I actually tried this with, I think I did Bud Light, Mountain Dew. Not recently. I tried that. I think it was over the summertime, and it is actually not bad at all. So if you're so inclined, a little Mountain Dew, maybe a little Bud Light or Coors Light, whatever light beer you prefer, just half and half, mix it together and get yourself a tasty treat. Definitely not good for you, but so try it out. All right. So for this week's show, like I said, we're going to be going over my top games of 2022, and we're going to be doing it in kind of an awards fashion or an awards format. And what I've done is I've actually put together a list of awards that I wanted to give some of the games that I played. And it's cool because one of the things I did this year, knowing that I was going to start this podcast, and it's always kind of something I wanted to do and just never did it really, is track every game that I played this year or like beaten this year, with the exception of a couple. I think there's a multiplayer game or two on there that I kind of played through my fulfillment, but I kept track of that. And so it's nice to be able to kind of look at this list and look back and say, wow, these are all the games that I've played. And then I can extract from that some of my favorite games, which is what I did to put together these awards. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And of course, leading up to what I think is my game. Well, I don't think, I know what is my 2022 game of the year. And if you've tuned into the last, I would say, couple episodes, you might have a good idea of what that game is. But nonetheless, we're going to be talking about that. One thing I did want to touch on again, and I know I said I'm getting sick and tired of it, but there's been a couple of really interesting things circulating regarding the Activision, Blizzard, Microsoft acquisition deal. And I just find it interesting. Again, they're just pure rumors, but I wanted to touch on it because if any stretch of this comes to fruition, it'll be really, really interesting regarding this space. So again, these are just rumors. I've just seen it circulating on Twitter, but I wanted to chat about it. And the first is there's rumors about a survey going to certain Xbox Game Pass subscribers where Microsoft is asking them about the idea of introducing a subscription tier with ads for Game Pass. And this is interesting because first of all, it's like, how would that work with ads? Like, does you get like some ads when you boot up the game or something and kind of go through that, or every time you log into Game Pass? I don't know what that looks like. And it's just, I don't know, because you see this with a lot of subscription services, like Hulu, for example. They've got like a lower tiered plan with ads. Spotify has plans with ads. I even think like Paramount Plus or one of those other ones have ads. I know Netflix has explored this, talked about it. And, in the video space, it kind of makes sense to a certain degree. Like we're used to like commercials and stuff like that. But for games, it just doesn't seem right. It just seems weird. And this doesn't, like, there's already product placement and various advertisements built into a lot of the big AAA games. So I don't know about this. It just seems really weird. So I mean, again, we'll see if that comes, if there's any truth to it, or if that's something Microsoft wants to do. I don't know how that'll go over with certain folks. I don't like it at all. And I'm wondering if this is indicative of, maybe trying to extract more revenue from the service. I know they stated at one point it was profitable and there was, that 2.9 billion earned in revenue. But again, we don't know the costs of this thing. So I'm very skeptical of it. And so I'm kind of wondering if maybe they're looking for other ways to extract more money out of this service that they've kind of set themselves upon. Now, the other rumor that's kind of circulating around is, and again, this is pure rumor, take it with a huge grain of salt, but I saw someone talking about they've heard that Xbox is considering removing first party titles from day and date releases and moving that to like 6 months out. So they would release a first party game, and then 6 months later it'd be on Game Pass. And I don't know that I believe that, because that's like the big thing with Game Pass, right? That's the differentiator. The big selling point on Game Pass is day and date games. Now, maybe they still get day and date games from like, third parties, like they've got the upcoming Lies of P, Atomic Heart, for example. So maybe these third party games will still come day and date, but maybe they just push their first party titles out to at a later date and eventually come to the service. But again, I just find that one hard to believe, for the sense that that's what they've been touting for years, is that these games are coming to Game Pass day and date, and that's what everyone expects now at this point. And with their biggest upcoming games, like so Starfield, Redfall, the next Forza game, people are expecting to be able to play that day one on Game Pass. They don't want to buy it; they want to play it on Game Pass. That's the point. So to move away from that just seems like suicide almost. Like, I really feel like that just destroys that service, because again, that's the selling point. That's the main driver and differentiator from other services like the PS Plus service. So I find that one a little hard to believe, but on the other end, I do think it's interesting and in a way believable, because I have to imagine that they're looking for other ways to, again, generate more money from this service. We already saw that the Xbox is raising the price for all their games. They're finally catching up to the $70 price tag. And you saw a lot of people were like, I don't care. I'm just going to play it on Game Pass. Case in point. But they're doing that, and then they're going to raise the price of Game Pass. And I wouldn't be surprised if the price of Game Pass goes up right before Starfield launches to, again, coincide that. We need more money. And then the other thing is like, once these first party titles start hitting the Game Pass service, the costs of those games are now injected into the service, and Starfield is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in development. This game has been in development for, 6 years, I think. It's been a long time. It's been kind of cooking for a while, and that that's not a cheap game. And so, how are they going to make up that money? They'll sell some copies, and I have to imagine they're going to do some form of collector's edition, but a lot of people are going to be wanting that on Game Pass, so they're not going to buy it. So how are you going to make up that money? I don't know if you can get enough new subscriptions to cover that cost. Plus Redfall, Redfall's got to be a couple $100 million as well. I would imagine, maybe like $200 million. It's a big AAA game. It's got a lot of people at those studios. So just those two games combined, you're looking probably $500 million, maybe. Now that cost is injected into the service, and that's a lot of money. That doesn't also account for all the major big AAA titles that they're bringing to the service next year that a lot of people were excited for, like Atomic Heart, like Lies of P, like Wolong, Fallen Dynasty. That one's a pretty big one. Silk Song, that's got to be a pretty big one. So I don't know. I just have to imagine they're looking for ways to extract more revenue out of this. And if they did move to this, what that tells me is that PlayStation was right, in the sense that it's not a good idea to put your games day and date on the service. And I actually liked this idea, and I think I talked about this, where if you wait to put games on a subscription service, regardless of your own subscription service or not, but you put the game out a la carte and you sell it. Once those sales kind of dwindle and you've extracted as many sales as you want, that's when you can put it on the service, and then maybe extract some more revenue from it, and kind of reignite the life of the game. And then when you talk about Sony's strategy and PlayStation's strategy, they also, port games over to the PC. That's another boost of life for that game to where you can extract more revenue out of it. So kind of that three-pronged approach, I think makes a lot of sense. And that's not Xbox's business plan. That's not their strategy. But again, if this is true, maybe they're starting to see that might be the way to go. I don't know. Again, I don't think that one's true, but I found it really, really interesting. So I wanted to touch on those because I find them absolutely fascinating. And this saga just continues. Actually, and I saw something else today that I guess a group of 10 random gamers are filing a lawsuit against I think they're over in the EU, against the deal, the Activision Blizzard deal, which is just fascinating stuff. So this is just a wild ride, but those two things really stood out to me that I wanted to touch on. Now, before we get into my top games of 2022, though, we got to talk about the games that we are playing. Now, as always, remember to write in, let me know what games you've been playing, especially over this holiday break. A lot of people have time off, spending time with their families. Let me know what you're playing or what you're trying to get through in the backlog. For me, I really haven't been playing a ton of games, well, since the last time I recorded, but even just this week, I've kind of been, I don't know, not necessarily in the mood. I mean, sometimes you just kind of, you're not in the mood and maybe you just want to watch TV. You're just kind of, I don't know, just chill, you relax a little bit and just kind of turn your brain off from everything. That's kind of the way I've felt. It's been, for me personally, it's been a little busy at work and, Christmas and all that stuff. So I haven't played too much, but I did start Callisto Protocol. And I don't know where the game clock is on this, like how many hours you've played, but I want to say I've probably played about 5 hours. Actually, I was actually just playing it before I hopped on to record this podcast. So I think I'm about 5 hours and at about chapter 5. I don't know how many chapters there are, but I think that's where I'm at. And this game is very much Dead Space in the best possible ways. I mean, it's done by the creators of the original Dead Space, so it makes sense, but it is very, very similar from like stomping to the movement. It's very slow movement. And I remember kind of Dead Space always kind of have that very slow, kind of heavy movement. And just, some of the enemy designs in some of the kind of being in the spaceship, and you're not in a spaceship, you're in a space facility on one of the moons, but there's so many similarities. It's kind of funny. It's like uncanny almost. But it's not a bad thing by any means because I love Dead Space. One of the other things that stood out to me that I think a lot of people have noticed is it's a beautiful game and it runs well. I'm playing it on the performance mode of the PS5. Haven't had any noticeable hiccups except one, but it wasn't too bad. Nothing too major. No bugs I think that I've encountered, so it's a pretty smooth game. And granted, I didn't play it on launch, and I think some people had some issues with it, so I am playing it. The most couple patches I think have come out, so take that. But the face animations in this game are phenomenal. Like they have this very photorealistic faces that they're doing, and the main protagonist is played by, I think it's Josh Duhamel. He's a famous actor. He was in like the Transformer movies and stuff like that. But it's almost weird to see him as the main character. But it's so realistic. They look amazing. Like the face, it almost looks out of place. It's like so good. Like you see the character, and the character looks great, lots of detail, beautiful. But then you see this photorealistic face, and it's like, whoa, it's kind of crazy. And then when they put the helmets on, like the space helmets with the lights on their faces, like it's very, very well done, very realistic. That's pretty sweet. Now the combat, I think, is the one area that's maybe tripping up a lot of people, and it's okay. It can be satisfying once you kind of get the hang of it. You do this kind of weird like dodge mechanic where you kind of hold directions to dodge just with the left stick rather than, like tap a button or something like that to dodge. Um so it's and there's kind of just a lot of that. You start to get, some guns and stuff like that. And that's good. given that it's a survival horror game, I'm trying to conserve my ammo, though I'm playing on like the normal difficulty and I feel like I have a ton of ammo. So that's not too much of an issue. But you definitely kind of want to do these combos where you're like dodging, doing a lot of melee, and then shooting them on occasion. And again, it's okay. It's just like compared to the Dead Space, and this game is just inevitably going to be compared to Dead Space. Like what makes Dead Space so great is being able to like strategically chop the limbs off using your various weapons of your enemies. And there were some really cool weapons. Like I think one of my favorites that I can remember is actually two of them. One, you get the chainsaw that like shoots a blade out and just spins. Like it was just so cool just to shoot that thing out and just grind it on dudes. And then there was the one with the really wide like laser beam that you can just like trip up a ton of people. So that kind of combat mechanic and some of the cool weapons that you get in Dead Space really set it apart. Whereas this game, it feels a little more generic and more melee focused, which it's fine, but it's not necessarily what I was looking for, I guess. But we'll see as the game progresses because I still have, I think, plenty of left to play. The other thing, since I did just get done playing, the story's starting to pick up, and I'm starting to kind of ask like my questions like, what the hell's going on here? And I'm kind of seeing, I feel like I'm seeing some parallels to Dead Space as well from a story perspective. In again, not spoiling anything, but just in the sense that you're kind of on this facility, shit goes down, and something's up. Like you just kind of get this like something's up, and I don't trust anyone and all that stuff. So we'll see. But I'm enjoying it so far. It is good. It's very survival. There's a few jump scares that have gotten me. That's pretty good. One thing though, and this isn't a problem with just this game because I talked about it with God of War, is there's too many crawl spaces. You do a lot of kind of tight squeezing through spaces, and we know that typically this is to hide load times. And I just feel like the devs got to figure out a different way. Like I'm getting tired of crawling through spaces. Like can we not think of a different way to hide this stuff? I don't know. So there's that. But looking forward to continue playing that. To let you know as I continue my playthrough and eventually beat it. But another game I wanted to give a shout out that I just discovered is a small RPG that just came out called Chained Echoes. And it released, I think it was December 8th on all platforms. And it is available on Game Pass, which is pretty cool. And it looks awesome. I've been watching some gameplay like on Twitch and stuff, and it looks freaking fantastic. So I wanted to read the synopsis for you because I think this is a really cool game. And if you are into JRPGs, I think you should check this game out for sure because it seems like it's gotten some pretty good reviews. People are really enjoying this. So here we go. Quote, Chain Echoes is a story-driven JRPG where a group of heroes travel around the vast continent of Volandis to bring an end to the war between its three kingdoms. In the course of their journey, they will travel through a wide array of diverse landscapes spanning from the wind-tanned plateaus and exotic archipelagos to sunken cities and forgotten dungeons. Take up your sword, channel your magic, or board your mech. Chained Echoes is a 16-bit style RPG set in a fantasy world where dragons are as common as piloted mechanical suits. It just sounds dope. So they're fusing like fantasy with like almost steampunk or like sci-fi. I love that. So and it looks cool. It's definitely got that SNES 16-bit style graphics, beautiful looking. And like I said, it's on Game Pass, so I'm kind of wanting to check this out. It seems like a pretty long RPG though. I was seeing, I think it was like 40 to 50 hours, which is a long game. But I don't know. It looks really cool. Check it out. I want to play it, and I'm contemplating whether or not I want to dive in on Game Pass or like just buy it and play it on like handheld or something. I don't know. It just seems like a good handheld game. But I know with Game Pass, I need to look into if you can play that game like through cloud gaming on the mobile, because then that would be worth it. But it looks awesome. Check it out. Also, another game that I want to try out that it finally came out is called Sword of the Vagrant. And I've talked about this game. Gosh, I think this game is supposed to come out beginning of the summer of this year. And I remember talking about it on this podcast. But I saw that it finally came out, and it came out, I think, in 2017 on Steam. But it's beautiful, like hand drawn, uh, beautiful like painted art style graphics, and it's a 2D action RPG where you kind of just go on this challenging adventure. You got combat, special skills, all that stuff, and it just looks cool. It looks like a lot of fun. I'm kind of digging it. The reviews seem very lukewarm from what I've seen, but I think it looks really cool. It was only $10 too, so I did pick that up, and would like to jump into it. But again, you know how it goes. Ain't nobody got time for that. We got to find time. I got a massive backlog. There's like 15 games I want to play right now all at the same time. So either way, that's what I'm playing. Let me know what you are playing. Okay, let's dive into it. Let's talk about the best games I played at 2022. But before we do, our buddy Rob wrote into the show at Turnbull 67. He says, I played all the games that caught my attention. My game of the year is The Last Hero of Nostalgia. Yeah, I think that's Nostalgia. Next year, looking forward to Dead Space Remake. Well, I am definitely looking forward to that game for sure. The Last Hero of Nostalgia. I think I've heard of this game, but I don't know what it is. Let's look it up. Oh, wait, I think here, let's look at this. I think Xbox Tavern was telling me about this game. He said he really liked it. I think he was talking about it. Wow. So is a satirical action adventure brought to life by a twisted and wicked tale featuring hard but fair combat, full character customization, unique battle armor, and engaging narrative mechanics. Very positive reviews. Interesting. That game looks pretty cool. Huh. Okay, that's your game of the year. That's nice. That's a really unique pick. I dig it. Rob. Well, thank you, Rob, for tuning in and writing into the show. I really do appreciate it. That's a good pick. I'm going to assume that's on all platforms, but I see it's definitely on PC, but I think it's on Xbox and other platforms as well. So maybe something to check out, put in the old backlog. But for me, let's get into my favorite games of 2022. And remember, I'm going to do this in awards format. So what I've done is I went through all my games that I had on my phone. And actually, if I look here, how many games did I play this year? Through to completion. So 1, 2, 21? That seems like quite a good amount. But I went through that list of 21 games that I've played through to completion and chose what I've got 7 or 8 awards to give out leading up to my game of the year. So let's dive into that, shall we? Now, this first one is just a straight up shout out. I couldn't think of an award to give it, but I wanted to give this game a shout out because I really, really enjoyed it. And if you are one of the early adopters, early listeners to the podcast, you've heard me talk about this game. So I want to give a shout out to Death's Door. Now, this game came out actually in July of last year, 2021, and it was available at Game Pass. I think it still is available on Game Pass if I'm not mistaken. And I jumped into it January of this year and talked about it again on those very first few episodes of the podcast. But it's actually everything I wanted Tunic to be. Thinking back, now that I've played Tunic, thinking back, I expected Tunic to be more like this and have that inspiration from Zelda than Tunic actually did. And so if you don't know, Death's Door is basically, there we go. It's an action adventure game that's very Zelda inspired. It wears its inspiration clearly on its shoulders. And it's a really cool premise because you play this, I think it's either a crow or a raven who's part of basically a grim reaper, and you go out and kind of, collect the souls. And when you go out on one of your typical missions, shit goes down, and that's what kind of starts you on this adventure. And it's actually a really cool story. The combat's fun. It's fun boss battles. Again, it doesn't have as many like Zelda like puzzles as you'd expect, but it was more Zelda like than Tunic. But it was just such a great game that I would highly recommend to anybody. And me personally, I would recommend, if you're looking for a Zelda like game, I would recommend Death's Door over Tunic, even though Tunic has some really cool, unique mechanics. Again, with that game manual that I mentioned, but I don't know, Death's Door just was a better game for me, in my opinion. So I wanted to give it a shout out because it is definitely one of my favorite games that I've played through this year. So with that, let's give out some awards. And my first award, I'm calling Nostalgia Overload. And that award goes to TMNT Shredder's Revenge. And this game was awesome. It was just such a blast from the past for me. Growing up as a little kid during the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, this game fully embodied that, from the music that was, redone, a little bit modernized, if you will, but still very reminiscent of its original. And then from the character designs to some of the bosses and the enemies that you encounter in this game, it was just full nostalgia for me. Like I'd be playing it, encounter the boss, and I'm like, oh, I remember that guy. I couldn't remember his name, but I remember what he looked like. And it was just so much fun. Like that game is genuinely a great beat 'em up. And I had so much fun playing it. And I actually played online with just random people, and it was a blast. It was a great time. It's a really short game too. I think you can beat it, in one sitting or a couple hours if you want to, but it's well worth it. I think it's like 20 or $25. Well worth the price tag. Or if you have Game Pass, it's on Game Pass. And it's just such a fantastic game. I think it's done by Tribute Games, who also did another game I played through this year called Panzer Paladin. I talked about that one. That's a good game as well, though a little bloated in my opinion, but still a really great classic, you know, NES style platformer game. Whereas this is a very classic arcade beat 'em up style game, and it's really really good, really really good. And I think in this game too, one of the cool things is you can have 6 players all at one time with each of the 6 like playable characters, and it's just like chaos, but it's so fun. So fun. So shout out to TMNT Shredder's Revenge. That is a fantastic game that's really just hit nostalgia for me. Now, the next award I want to give out is the Can't Believe I Played That award. And this award goes to Assassin's Creed Origins The Hidden Ones DLC. Yes, I'm giving an award to a DLC. And this DLC came out back in January 2018. And that's why I can't believe I played that. I rarely go back and play DLCs, although there are some great ones out there, but I rarely go back and play DLCs just because, typically when I beat a game, I'm done with it and I'm ready to move on to the next game. So it's very hard to get me back to play a game, and with rare exception. And typically, if I go back to a game, it's got to be a really good game, like a damn good game. And I loved Assassin's Creed Origins. I genuinely loved that game. I haven't played all the Assassin's Creeds. I think I've talked about that before, but through the recommendation of a buddy, actually Rob, who we just talked about, mentioned on the show, he's the one that said, you should try out Assassin's Creed Origins. This game is awesome. When it came out, I think it came out back in 2017. And so I was like, all right, I did. I picked it up and then I just fell in love with it. It just totally encapsulated me. And then this year, I don't know what it was, but I kind of hit a lull. I think this was around summertime, the beginning of summer, or maybe late spring, where I was just kind of looking for, something to play. And then I saw that this DLC was on sale and I had some credits that Xbox had given me. And so I was like, why not? Kind of sounds fun. Get back to that game, give it a go. Heard the DLC was pretty good. So I jumped into it, and I did enjoy it for the most part. The other one I think is a more kind of a beefier DLC, so I think that one's probably a little bit better, but it was still fun. It was cool to come back to that world and just play through some additional missions. I didn't really understand the story, if I'm being all that honest, but I I never go back to these games. I had to mention this because it's not something I typically do, and I literally feel like I can't believe that I played that. So that's why that game gets that award. Now, after that, the next award I want to give out is called my most underrated game. Most underrated. And I got to give that to Nobody Saves the World. And now this game came out in January of 2022, so the beginning of the year. And I definitely think a lot of people kind of have recency bias when it comes to this game because I feel like it's just nobody talks about it. Done by Drinkbox Studios, who are such great developers. Like they're the ones that did Guacamelee. Um, there's another game on Vita that they did that was then ported to other ones. I can't think of the name off the top of my head right now, but great games, beautiful art style, very, kind of unique art style. It's very like cartoony almost, but so good. This game was awesome. And I talked about this one on the show, gushed about it. And it's an action RPG dungeon crawler. And again, one of the cool mechanics about this game is the ability to shift between various different characters. So you play as this like nobody character, but the whole shtick is you can transform into a variety of other types of characters. So like one's a magician, I should say, not musician, a rat, like a big knight, bodybuilder, and tons of others, like a dragon eventually and stuff like that. And so you can turn into these other characters, each with their own unique set of abilities. And then eventually you can start using those abilities for every other character. So the whole point is you put together builds. So you choose one character and then you kind of customize those abilities for that character to get through various dungeons and play through the game, because each dungeons maybe has different attributes or something unique about them. So for example, one of the dungeons in the game, everything's like max damage, so everything's one hit. So the build I did is basically a build where I can call a lot of their known familiars, or basically, buddies, for me to go do all the damage. And then another ability to basically half all damage. So I'm not one hit now. I'm like, 2, 3 hits. So you do things like that. And that's really fun. Like once you put together that build, it's so satisfying. Like once you find a successful build and you're kind of just plowing your way through this dungeon, it's really, really cool. And again, I say this game's underrated because this game, well, I think it garnered a good amount of attention when it came out in January, but I feel like after that, again, obviously big games came out like Horizon, Elden Ring, etc. But just kind of disappeared off the planet. Like no one talks about this game anymore. And it's fantastic. I think it's still on Game Pass, so if you have that, try it out there. Otherwise, I think it's 20 or $25. Well worth that price tag, I think. And I think my playthrough was 20 to 25 hours, so it's a good I think it's a good length for that game given what you do. So I didn't really feel like it was too long. So it's such a fantastic game that I just had to recognize it in some fashion, because again, I feel like no one is talking about it and everyone overlooks it. So check it out. After that is the award for most addicting game. And this I have to give to Inscription. I played this year. Inscription came out, I think it was last year on PC, and then finally came this year to PlayStation in August. And I had heard so many good things about this game that I heard it was coming to PlayStation, I was like, I'm getting this game. I have to. I want to see what all the buzz is about, because so many people were ranting and raving about this game. And this is a game that captured me. It completely captured me, and I couldn't put down once I really got invested into it. It's such a unique experience. And the whole premise is it's a card game, a digital card game to a certain extent, but it's not all that it seems to be. And I'll leave it at that because really you got to go into this game blind. Go into this game as blind as possible. It's fascinating. It's well worth your time. And even the card game itself, I find I don't typically like card building or deck building games at all. But this one, the strategy of it, I found really, really fun. Like it's, you're treating it almost like a puzzle and trying to figure out, you know, in your move or a couple of moves, how do I take down the enemy was really, really cool. And so I really enjoyed my time with it. It is a little bit of a roguelike to a certain extent. So it has some roguelike tendencies. But again, if you're at all interested in this game, don't look it up. Seriously, like go into this game as blind as possible and try it out. It is awesome. And I want to say I probably beat this game in like 15 hours or less, maybe. So it can, I think there are sections where it can kind of feel a little bit long or maybe repetitive to a certain extent, but I think it's well worth it because it was fascinating. And I'll just say the ending kind of left you thinking a little bit. But it was cool. Very, very cool game that I highly recommend. And, you know, one of the ways I can tell a game is good is if I can't put it down. And this is certainly one of them. So the next game I'm going to give an award to, I'm calling the award Oldie But a Goodie. And that's because I'm giving an award to Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning Edition. This game originally came out, and I've talked about this back in 2012. And then they remastered it in 2020. And then came to PS Plus, I think it was November of 2021. And it's a game that I had always heard good things about, been wanting to play. And then I want to say, like in 2017, maybe 2018, I finally bought the 360 version of it because it was still available for sale, and I still have it. It's sealed on the 360. I bought it with the intentions of playing it, but just never got around to it. Then I heard the remastered version was coming out, so I was like, okay, I'll just get that version. That'll be the ideal version to play. I did get that version, but didn't start it right away. And then it came to PS Plus, and I was like, all right, now I got to jump into this game. And I actually had a nice window. I jumped into it about November of last year, but I didn't beat it until January of this year because I think I played it for 60 hours or so, 60, 70 hours. It's a long game. There's a lot to do in that game, but it is awesome. It really is as good as everyone says it is. And if you think about this game in the context of the time that it came out, that's awesome. It's fascinating. It's really good. I think it's got a good story, and I think it's one of those things where it was overshadowed by Skyrim because Skyrim had come out earlier, or the year prior, and so with everyone being enamored, but we all know that was a cultural phenomenon when that game came out. So it's this game definitely got overshadowed, but it is a really good game, and if you like kind of fantasy Western RPGs, I would highly recommend this game because it's so good. And the remaster definitely could have been done a little better. I think there was probably some more work they could have done. It still runs fine, and it's still a fine looking game. There is still some of that oldness to it to a certain extent, but I feel like you can get over that pretty quickly. And it's just so good. Like I liked the story, though I didn't fully understand it. There's a lot of side quests content to this game, lots of areas to explore. And I think one of my favorite parts of it was actually the faction quests. So there's different factions that you can kind of join. And those quest lines I thought were awesome. Very well written, very intriguing, interesting, and worth your time to do. So this game's great. And there's different builds you can do, different abilities and weapons to use. I mean, it's your typical Western RPG in that sense, but it's great. So even though it's not a game that came out in 2022, I did play it and beat it in 2022 and wanted to give it a shout out. So that's why it gets the oldie but a goodie award. After that, we have my most disappointing game award, and this goes to Dying Light 2. Now, I've talked about Dying Light 2 on this podcast quite a bit, so I won't belabor this game that came out in February of this year, but I will say that this game did let me down. Now, I did enjoy some of my time with this game. I think there are some moments that were interesting and some of the story beats that I enjoyed, but overall, it's just not what I wanted in a sequel. Because the first Dying Light is terrifying, and the first Dying Light is so good as well, like so good. It's definitely one of the best PS4 games, I think. I know it's on Xbox too, so it's definitely one of the best games of probably of the last generation. And the fact that they moved away from that kind of that almost survival horror feel, though it's not a survival horror game, but those horror elements to focus more on kind of an action RPG just doesn't. I don't think it fit within the Dying Light universe. And the whole like nighttime mechanic and you potentially turning into, trying to avoid turning into a zombie. I didn't really enjoy that at all compared to what the previous game was. So it just kind of felt like a letdown to me. It still had the satisfying combat and, parkouring is fun, but it just didn't, it's not what I expected. And I hope that they learn from that. I'm not saying we need a Dying Light 3 by any means, but I think whatever they do next, I would like them to focus less on this kind of action RPG and more on what made the first Dying Light so special. Those horror elements, your parkour, the nighttime, the scariness of it, the intensity of it was, I think, really what made that game. And Dying Light 2 just didn't have the same to the same degree, which I thought was just so disappointing. So for me, that was my most disappointing game of 2022. Now, my next award is called Exceeded Expectations because this game truly exceeded all of my expectations, and that's Ghostwire Tokyo. Again, I've talked about this game. I've gushed about this game multiple times. But this game just totally blew me away. I didn't really know what to expect from it. I kind of have low expectations because leading up to its March 2022 release, I just felt like this game just didn't really look like it was for me. When I first saw it, I was interested, but once I learned that it was less survival horror, which was so disappointing to me because Tango Gameworks, coming from their previous games, the Evil Within games, Evil Within 1 and 2, which I love and adore, especially the second one, is disappointing to see that to go away from that survival horror to, again, more of an action game kind of just really set me off. And then when they showed off the gameplay and they kind of showed off almost like Far Cry open world type, elements, I was like, this just does not look fun to me. It kind of looks like a flop. Then it came out. I, of course, ignored it. And then I'd heard some good things about it and that it was actually a lot of fun. And so I was kind of, still on the fence about it. And then it dropped in price pretty quick too, which maybe means it didn't really do that well. But I picked it up. I think I got it for like $30. Finally decided it's like, you know what? I'm going to give this game a go. I've heard some good things about it. I have low expectations, so we'll see. Hopped into it and it totally blew me away. Like I just fell in love with it. I find it so fun. I think the combat is a little generic and repetitive, but still fun and has some satisfying moments. But I think what's most fun about this game is the collectathon of it. I really enjoyed collecting all the spirits in the various items and just traveling throughout this world and exploring Tokyo. There's a lot of Japanese culture in this game. It feels like it's treated with a lot of respect, and it's very cool to be exposed to that Japanese culture, but also, like I said, explore downtown Tokyo in this almost like horrifying setting. It was a lot of fun, like a lot of fun. And it actually had a pretty good story too, once you kind of get through that. It's not terribly long either. If you were to just play through the story, I ended up 100%ing this game. I got the platinum for it. I think I played it for like 30, almost 40 hours, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot to do there, and there's a ton of collectibles. So if you're into that, I would highly recommend this game. But it just totally exceeded everything I thought the game was. And it turned out to be a game that I absolutely loved and adore. So shout out to Ghostwire Tokyo and Tego Gameworks. Though let's make some Evil Within 3. You know what I mean? I would love to see that. And last, my game of the year. That goes to God of War Ragnarok. Probably not a surprise to a lot of folks, but I got to give a shout out to God of War Ragnarok. That is my game of the year. And it only narrowly beat Horizon Forbidden West. As I've talked about before on the podcast, I've gushed about this game so much. And I won't belabor that, but this game truly is special. I think it's fantastic. I think the story is beautifully written. It's a beautiful looking game. There's so much detail to it. The music is phenomenal. The voice acting is so very well done. And I think, again, I think this game hit me harder because I'm now a father. So there are certain parts of the game that just hit different. Having that personal kind of relatable experience in my life. And I'm just, again, the way, once you get the true ending to this game, I don't know, that kind of just, it left an impression on me to where I still think about that today and how beautifully that was wrapped up and the way they just, the last line and they just finished it, and something special. And, I've talked about this before to where if a game totally encapsulates me and it's a game I can't put down, that's how I know it's a good game. At least for me, in my opinion. And this was one of them. I couldn't put it down. I I got the platinum on it. Pretty much did everything in the game. Beat all the bosses. Got all the stuff, the collectibles. Pretty much, I think I just about everything. I'm pretty like 95%, if not 100%, like every area. But I got the platinum, so it's such a fantastic game. Like it's crazy because God of War 2018 was so good that it's hard to imagine that they would top it. And I know for some it didn't, and I understand some of the criticisms of it, but to look at that game and not see something special is mind blowing to me because I think it did exceed the first game in a lot of ways. Now, part of that is because it builds off of what the first game did. And there is some dependency on what happens in the first game, but it's such a masterpiece, I think. It's truly something special. And I would definitely recommend it to anybody and everybody that has a PlayStation. And not even that loves anything, but if you have a PlayStation, play this game. Seriously. And like I said, it narrowly beat out Horizon Forbidden West because up until this point, Horizon Forbidden West was my game of the year and not Elden Ring. And I've talked about this a little bit. I understand why Elden Ring is a lot of people's game of the year, and I understand for the most part why it won at the Game Awards for Game of the Year. I mean, I don't think you can deny the cultural phenomenon that game had this year and how big it was. I mean, just up until recently, it was the top selling game of the year. And it just was now outpaced by Call of Duty, which is crazy. So crazy in multiple ways. But for me, I don't know what it is, but Elden Ring just didn't capture me in the same way that other Dark Souls games do. I do want to get back to it, and I will get back to it because I do want to beat it and just kind of mark it off the list, if you know what I mean. But it just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't resonate with me. I think the same with a lot of people. And I respect and I can understand why so many people love it and what the game does, but it just didn't resonate with me in that same way. Whereas Horizon, that's another one that just totally encapsulated me. I loved that game. And I think what was special about that game, again, not only the detail, but the combat's so good. I love the robot dinosaurs they introduced, but what really stands out to me about that game is the story and the direction that they took the story. So from, again, no spoilers, but from the first game to the second game, how they took it, I did not see it coming. Makes me very excited to see whatever they do next. And it was really, really cool. And it's a beautiful game too. I think it runs really well. So that was it up until God of War. But God of War, man, that just hit. And boy, did it hit. So that is my 2022 game of the year. Shout out to God of War Ragnarok. And that'll do it for this episode. Those are my favorite games, the best games that I've played this year through all these crazy awards that I put together. Let me know what you guys think about this. Hit me up on Twitter or let me know down in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble. Again, I appreciate your love, kindness, support. I hope you guys all had a very Merry Christmas and happy holidays and Happy New Year, because that's coming up by the time you listen to this episode. And so I will see you on the next episode. So until then, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.